Good morning, and welcome to Redeemer Lutheran Church in Columbia, South Carolina, where we're part of the ELCA. I'm Pastor Gary Lodeholt. In 1960, Albert Schweitzer, now 85 and serving the people in Africa, was visited by a young seminary student. The student tells how one morning about 11 o'clock, he and Schweitzer, along with a few others, were walking up a hill in extremely hot weather. Suddenly, the 85-year-old Schweitzer broke away from the group and walked over to an African woman who was struggling to carry a load of firewood up the hill for the cook fires. Schweitzer took the entire load of wood from the woman and carried it up the hill for her. When Schweitzer returned to the group, one of them asked why he did things like that. They were concerned for his health and the strain he put on himself at his age. Schweitzer merely shrugged and said, "No one should ever have to carry a burden like that alone." What's true for firewood is also true of grief. We are talking about grief this week, lifting up how the Bible speaks about grief and the guidance and help the Bible and our faith give us. Perhaps one of the most significant insights in the Bible that the Bible offers us is that grief is a common experience. We all, at times, know the searing pain of sorrow and loss. We know the despair, the isolation, the deep ache in our hearts. In response, the Bible urges us to lean on one another in our grief. In other words, we are encouraged to grieve, not in isolation, but in community. Grief is a burden not meant to be borne alone. Perhaps Eliphaz, Bildad, and Elihu can serve as good models for us here. I know you're saying, who? Eliphaz, Bildad, and Elihu were Job's friends. We have already talked about Job some this week, but his friends, at least at first, offer us a deep and profound example of responding to grief. Later on in their discussion with Job, they turn out not to be as insightful or as faithful as Job is, but there in the beginning, they give exactly what is needed. I'm sure you remember how Job lost everything. It was everything. He lost all his herds and flocks, and then to make matters worse, his children had all gathered for a celebration, and the roof fell in and killed them all. He lost his wealth, his family, and his future all at once. It had to be devastating. He tore his clothes as a sign of mourning, as the custom was then, and then literally went and sat in an ash heap. There, in sorrow and loss, his friends found him, and when they did something remarkable. They sat down right there and joined him and didn't say a word. They sat with him in silence for 7 days. You see, the truth is that so often when we encounter someone who is grieving, we want to fix it. We want them not to feel that way. We are uncomfortable with those deep feelings. But frankly, most things we say are vapid platitudes. Many times later on, people who were grieving have told me how hurtful and insensitive things people said to them were. Mired in deep grief, there are really no words, and Job's friends seemed to know that. What they offered instead was their presence with Job. They joined him in his grief and didn't wander away uneasily or quickly. They joined him and they stayed with him, sharing his grief, entering his pain, helping him to bear his sorrow and loss. It was a ministry of presence. We aren't taught how to grieve. And so often we feel guilty and ashamed by our tears and as we relate to others. We are afraid to share them, afraid of being a burden, afraid of judgment, afraid of appearing weak, afraid of being misunderstood, and even afraid of being rushed through our grief. When we are grieving, so often we become isolated, not because we want to be alone, but because we don't know how to let others in. St. Paul offers us a couple of words for living together in grief. In Romans, he speaks of how to live in Christian communities, saying, rejoice with those who rejoice, weep with those who weep. When someone is grieving, we are not to try to fix their feelings, but rather to join with them in their weeping. In Galatians, likewise, he urges, bear one another's burdens. That's what Job's friends did. They sat with Job and helped him bear his grief. We are called to do likewise, to say to someone who is grieving, I am here and I'm not going anywhere, and I will walk with you through this. It doesn't fix anything. It doesn't deny the feelings of hurt and loss. It doesn't shy away from the pain. Instead, we share it. We help carry it. My grandfather's funeral was on a Saturday, and that night after the funeral, one of my uncles stayed in the home with my grandmother. The next morning, as he read the paper, my grandmother came out wearing her Sunday church going clothes. He said, Mama, where are you going? She said, I'm going to church. He asked again, do you think you should go to church in a time like this? And she replied, in a time like this, where else would I go? We are called to grieve in community. And that means not only sharing someone else's grief, but also opening ourselves to sharing our own with others. We can let others help us bear our grief. From the very beginning, God said, it is not good for people to be alone. That truth applies not only to companionship, but also to suffering. Grief is a valley we walk through, but never by ourselves. When someone is grieving, don't just do something. Stand there. May we bear one another's burdens in love and understanding. Thanks for sharing these moments with me, and remember to let this day belong to God.